Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of our TEPSA Presents. I'm your host tonight, Todd Neslony, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership here at the Texas Elementary Principals and Supervisors Association. We are thrilled twice a month to bring you a variety of topics. And tonight, we are going to be talking about something that's really close to my heart, but I know is also really close to my guest's heart as well, and that is battling childhood hunger, which in years past, if you've ever been an administrator, you have had kids at your school that have had these needs. But during a pandemic, those needs have expanded beyond imagination. So we're going to dive in today and talk a little bit. But before we go any further, I'd love to introduce my guest. Welcome so much, Katina. Thank you so much for being here. Kind of tell everybody who you are.
Hi, I'm Katina Martinez, and I'm the principal at Short Elementary in Arlington ISD.
And Katina, I know that childhood hunger and standing up to that and finding ways to solve it is something that's really personal to you. Talk to me a little bit about because as principals, we have 1,000 things on our list and we try to give energy to each of them. But at some point that had to pull at your heart a little bit more. So talk to me when it became something that really just caught a little bit more of your attention than normal.
Well, I think it was something that just really started with me back in my student teaching. I was one of the first in my group of student teachers to volunteer to do student teaching in Fort Worth ISD. And I was going to be at a Title I campus. We had 98% of our kids were low socioeconomic students, and they were all 100% on free and reduced lunch. And so just that experience of watching those students just kind of really fueled that within me, because our students they were in need of academic support, but they were more so in need of just those essential basics of, where's my meal going to come from? So that kind of instilled that kind of desire for me to always focus on that. So I started teaching there at that school that I did student teaching at. And as a first year teacher, right, you want to take on the world, right? And so I would bring snacks for my kids, and I would make sure that they, when I did tutoring in the afternoon, that they had what they needed, substance wise to keep going, right? Because we had a full day. And so it's one of those things where it's just, they didn't have it. So I gave it if I could, So that really kind of instilled that for me. And then just kind of in my journey and my experience as an educator, a Title I campus has always pulled at my heartstrings. And that's where I've always felt like I'm most needed. And so being at my Title I campuses has really just continued to fuel that desire for me, not just making sure that my kids are getting what they need academically, because that's always our focus, right? Testing, STAR, accountability is always, at that forefront. But for me, it's really making sure that my kids have what they need to be able to take on that academic content. So for me, it's always been that whole child approach. You have to look at everything. And we know from Maslow's hierarchy, right? You have to look at those basic needs and meet those basic needs before you're ever going to reach a child academically in the classroom. So I think it just stays with me because I know what my own children have had, a lot of other kids don't have. And, yes, being a pandemic has made it even more important. It's kind of just stepped that up for people to recognize, but it's been there. It's been there. I'm 22 years into education, and really that journey to figure out how can we best meet the needs of our kids has been something we've been on for years and years and years. So.
Well, I can speak from personal experience too that, just growing up myself, there was a point in my childhood when my mother had to get help from the school and different things like that. And, and so when I became a teacher, like you said, and an administrator, it became something that was really important to me too. Another way to make sure another type of need is met. As educators, I think, the best educators are always looking to help fill all the holes, and hunger's one of those. But I'd love to know, when we step in and we try to help like this, sometimes there's so many families who don't know how to ask for help or are uncomfortable receiving help because they've been raised that we handle our own stuff, we don't need your support, but there's a need there. How do you ensure that you bring in all types of families who might need that support?
And really and truthfully, Todd, what you do is you just have to kind of instill that culture, that community culture at your campus. You have to instill and communicate all of the resources that are available at the campus. We're here to make sure that we provide whatever your child would need. So you have to build relationships with your parents. You have to have nights where they can come in, they can receive education, they can receive resources, they can learn how to help their child. And in the same breath, you also get them familiar with here's the other resources we have. So when we're building any of our nights, especially at the beginning of the year, right, we have these, meet the teacher night, we have them come in. I purposely have our cafeteria staff there, making sure that they can have those one-on-one conversations, not anything out in the public, anything, private conversations about, hey, this is what we have to offer. And building those relationships really kind of builds that trust, and it breaks down those barriers for our parents. And then you also have to make sure that they understand how to access those resources, because it's one thing to just to say, hey, here's an application for free and reduced lunch. Oh, now it's online because we can't accept anything paper copy. But you know what, we're here to assist you. So I work very closely. We have a family engagement liaison. She's bilingual because we have Spanish speaking parents. We're in Texas, right? So we try to make it a point where we make parent nights, or she reaches out to parents, has conversations. We do things virtually because it's really all about just kind of almost flooding that pathway for them, right, with information, so that they know, what, this is just the norm. Like, this is just the norm. The school is here to help me. And so that's really kind of where it is, and where you can get those parents involved and really accessing those resources, so it's not something that they feel like I have to reach out to.
I love that. And you made so many great points in there just about tearing down walls and bringing them in and letting them see there's a big picture to this, and we want to help however we can. Now, tonight's episode is done in partnership with No Kid Hungry, which I know is an organization that is near and dear to your heart as well. So tell us a little bit about how you're involved with No Kid Hungry.
Well, it's a funny story. So at the end of my first year, 18, 19, I knew, just kind of watching, right? And I'm an observer. And so I will come into a new campus and I'm observing and I'm watching our kids in breakfast. They go to the cafeteria, they eat their breakfast, and then, the bell rings and they go to class, right? So you're watching these kind of systems that you put in place. And at the end of that school year, I knew, I didn't have percentages in front of me, but I just knew my kids aren't accessing breakfast like like they should be, right? So at the end, my student nutrition director came out and he said, hey, do you mind having a meeting with me so we can kind of talk about breakfast? And I said, I'm glad that you contacted me, because I was going to be contacting you to kind of see where are we at with our kids eating breakfast, right? We are a Title I campus. We have about 87% of our kids on free and reduced lunch, but I knew our percentages were low. So he and I sat down and we were about 25% of our kids were eating breakfast. And I don't even know if it was 25%. And so he was concerned about those numbers, and me, as soon as I knew that number, I was concerned, right? So it was there was lots of things to look at, because when you're a principal, you're looking at something and you're like, okay, why are my kids not eating breakfast? And so we brainstormed some ideas, and not a lot of campuses had ventured out to try breakfast in the classroom. And so he said, what do you think about doing breakfast in the classroom? That way, we can set it up all kinds of different ways. And, the more I thought about it, I said, because I'm always wanting to do what's best for kids, right? I'm willing to try anything so that we can get that percentage up, because I know my kids cannot learn if they're hungry. So we kind of dialogue, set up a system, he and I, and then we took it to the teachers, because of course, it all sounds good and grand when you're thinking about it. But you want to take it to the teachers because you want them to be able to ask questions. You want them to be able to understand the why behind why we're asking them to do this. And so we had this session. It was, right before summer, and this is kind of what we're going to venture into. This is why. And then he was available for any questions. And then as I was thinking about it, I was thinking, there had been, kind of some discipline issues in the cafeteria, and that social and emotional piece is so important for me. I want my kids to feel safe. And I was kind of thinking, you know what, this would kind of help, because breakfast in the classroom, you're with your teacher or the grade level teachers, people that you know, friends of yours that are in the class. You're sitting there eating, having your breakfast. It's a lot safer environment, I felt like, especially for my little bitties. They need to feel secure when they're eating. And I felt like, well, that would kind of eliminate kind of some of the things we were dealing with in the cafeteria. And then maybe it would just bump up that percentage, right? So we took it on. And so this is my second year. We took it on. We had a few bumps at the very, very beginning, more so with just the process and the kind of the procedure. But when my teachers were allowed to really talk about it, question it, find out the why, they sat with it over the summer, knowing it's coming. It's coming. You have to just set that mindset for your teachers and help them understand the importance of it, right? A lot of them, they didn't go through that. They don't understand it, but some of them did, and they understand it's important. So we're going to do whatever we could. So they took it on, and we started, and what happened was, the kids coming in, got their breakfast, went to the classroom. We worked out all the trash and the milk and the cleanup and all of that. But we just saw more and more kids eating, right? They're eating, having conversations in the morning, talking to the teachers in the morning, like just building relationships. Because it's kind of like sitting at the table, right, with your family, and you're having these great conversations. Relationships were stronger. Kids were really looking like they felt secure, and then they were ready, because we did need to improve our scores academically. We did need to get to a better place. So our kids are nice and full in their tummies, and they're ready to take on whatever it is. And this was all the way through pre-K 3 through 6th grade. They were all getting their breakfast. And so we just started to see, not only were they feeling good and safe and secure, they were then turning around and performing so much better. So at the end, we had bumped up our breakfast participation to over 50% of our kids were eating. We were actually performing, making double-digit gains on all of our assessments. So you can't say, well, was it just due to breakfast in the classroom? No, you can't say that. But what you can say is that you had more kids eating, feeling better, feeling more secure, that every day when I come to school, I have this option. And then I'm ready to perform when my teacher needs me to do so. I'm ready to learn. And they didn't have to worry about, oh gosh, I don't want to go in the cafeteria and eat breakfast, So we just started to see that, but also really collaborating with my student nutrition department. They came out and did focus groups with our kids. Like they would say, hey, Miss Martinez, can we come out and survey a couple kids, couple of classrooms, get their feedback on the menu, those kinds of things. And that's something that a principal might not want to take a moment to do, but I'm like, that's absolutely something that I will arrange for you. Come in, okay, this date, you come in this time, and yes, absolutely, because I want my kids to want to come and eat the food that they're being served, right? And so they gave input. They said, you know what, we really don't like this, but we like this, and maybe it could be like this. And then we also talked to teachers, how are y'all feeling? And one of the things was, the only thing that really came up was syrup. Can we find something other than syrup in the classroom? And so it was just those minor tweaks from, hey, we can definitely do something about the syrup, but hey, we can definitely change the menu and start offering some of these things. And so when kids feel like they have buy-in, here, it was my feedback that they listened to. You just have a more collaborative process, and you really do see the kids really enjoying that whole breakfast process. So there was so many positives that I can go on and on and on about, but just also a shout out to my janitorial staff. Like they were just like troopers, like, here we go. Here's what we're doing. We had a milk spill. This is what we do, but the kids just learn the process and they learn what the expectation is and they learn how to carry their trash to the, without spilling and all of those things. And you think, all of those things are, really important in the success of the program. And so anyway, it was just lots and lots of positives for our kids. And so seeing that increase just in participation and knowing that my kids were not hungry all day, and then they get their lunch, of course, and most of them, lunch is not an issue. It's free and reduced lunch. They go in and they get their lunch, but it was really that breakfast piece that we really felt was beneficial in like just addressing that whole child and making sure they were getting what they needed.
You said so much goodness in there. And I think one of the things, there were two things that really resonated with me. One is you said, we saw scores and things increase. And it's not that the hunger piece was the whole piece, because it's never one thing, but that thing did play a part in making things increase. And the other thing that I think is really important that you said is, being a principal at my school, there were quite a few kids who needed breakfast, but we're not going to go in that cafeteria and sit with strangers or sit by themselves or have other kids look at them like, why are you eating breakfast here? But you move that kind of stuff into the room, there's no shame. Like, I'll totally eat here in the room. I don't really care. Everybody else is around me is eating. I know all these people. This is my family in this room. Like, so I think that's really powerful. Well, Katina, as we wrap this conversation up, there's probably administrators who are listening today who think, you know what, Katina, this is really important to me too. I really want to help this with my students or my campus, but I don't even know where to begin. Where do you advise them to even start with trying to battle this?
I think you really have to know who to reach out to, like, and not be afraid to do that. You want to start this new initiative at your campus. So who can I start with, right? Of course, your nutrition director is kind of like your first person to reach out to. And then, of course, you're going to want to immediately reach out to your teachers and your staff, because it's going to be a whole school change. And so it's a huge shift. And so if you are setting that mindset, we have a growth mindset at our campus and we're always wanting to continue to improve. And my teachers and my staff are just beautiful at it. After, 2.5 years of being there, whatever a child needs is what a child needs. So you have to make sure you're communicating effectively with them, giving them some buy-in, collaboration, questioning, but you also have to be very strategic with the system that you put in place, because you can't miss a beat. Like I'm a very systematic person when I organize my thoughts and kind of how I'm going to roll things out at the campus level. So if I'm a principal trying to take this on, really think it through. How do you want it to look? And then design that system so that when you're ready to take it to your teachers and staff, after you've talked to your nutrition director and anybody else that would need to kind of help you plan that, you want to make sure you haven't missed any piece of it. Go through it with your staff and your teachers so that they can ask questions and they can say, well, what about this? Because that you could miss something. And so that when you roll it out, you really have very few bumps in the road, and it can just be all about the kids eating. And so, that's kind of my advice, but you always also have to have the mindset that, you know what, I'm going to overcome any obstacle that I need to overcome for my kids. And so that's always my mindset that drives me and hopefully other administrators. And I know they have that same mindset, all of the administrators that are in schools, especially now, right? So just always knowing that we can overcome any challenge together. And that's the message that I communicated out to them. And they knew, you're asking me to do what, Ms. Martinez? But they know that no matter what, I'm right there behind them to support them. And so I think that those are just huge pieces. And I think once you do that and you get it off the ground, it's just going to continue to flourish. And you're going to just come up with, different things that come up for little obstacles, and you're going to work through those obstacles and you're going to keep going because you know in the end it's going to benefit a kid.
Well, the advice you shared there, what I love about that advice is it's not just specific to diving in to try to help with childhood hunger on your campus, but it really is great for everything. No matter what problem you're trying to solve, what you're trying to bring in, how you're trying to bring your team together. I think you just had some beautiful words of wisdom to kind of wrap this conversation up. Well, Katina, this battling child hunger has been close to my heart, and I know it's close to yours. So thank you so much for coming and spending some time with TEPSA today.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. It was one of those things that, it's kudos to my staff, kudos to my teachers, kudos to my kids, because really and truthfully, it was just, just one idea that was brought to me, and it was just like, you know what, whatever I need to do for my kids. And so it's really about just my staff, my campus embracing that. And so I know that all administrators out there, you have that within your staff. And so I think as long as we keep the focus on our students, that's what's most important, because they do need to never worry about where their next meal is coming from and how am I going to get through the day, without having my breakfast. And so you just want to make sure you're shoring up all of those things for them so that everything can be very predictable, so that then they can be the best they can be every day.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you everybody for joining us for another episode of TEPSA Presents. You can check out all the past episodes and our videos on Facebook, on our YouTube channel, or we've also put them all on our podcast, TEPSA Talk, that is available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We hope everybody has a great rest of your evening. And if there's ever any support that anybody here at TEPSA can provide, reach out at any time.